And it says we're live. I hope. All right. Good evening, everybody. Good night. Good morning. Whatever time it is over where you guys are. Um, Late at night for Friday for me, as usual. Welcome back to my stream. Hope everybody has had a really good week. It's been a really busy week for me. And a week full of things that have been happening. Yeah, let's go through a little bit of news at the start. The biggest one, in my opinion, is the change in version numbers for Godot. Um, when Godot 4 got to a point, or where I should say, when the all the work on the Vulkan renderer got to a point where we felt comfortable merging that into Master with the idea of it coming out early this year, um, Master became Godot 4, which is going to remain the way that it is. And at that point in time, we had Godot 3.2.1, I think we were at the point. And we kind of figured that we wouldn't be having that many more patches there, just some fixes and stuff like that. But as time went by and as, bigger things happened in Godot 4 and more was added and, the scope increased, and the deadline for releasing Godot 4 moved to later this year. Bigger and bigger changes ended up in Godot 3.2.4, which is the current release candidate. And we're already at release candidate 5 or 6, I think. Or we were preparing to release release candidate 6 any day now, which is now going to be the next or the first 3.3 release. A lot of stuff was being added in, and that kind of stopped making sense calling that 3.2, because normally when you have a minor release, you would only do patch releases. You would only do releases with fixes. You wouldn't do a feature release anymore. And there's so much new in 3.2.4. There's not a list on this guy. Do we have? Hold on. I'm just gonna go back to the main news site. Yeah, it should be in here. So this was release candidate 5, released about a week ago. And we even need to go back to release candidate 4, where it has the whole list of things that went in here. Because 5 was only 5 was actually just a release with some fixes, basically, because this one was from the 9th. But some of the really big highlights in here. This was the only one that we undid. Is the FBX importer, which was rewritten. That does still need some more work. It's improved in many ways, and there's one or two rough edges to it that hopefully will be solved for quickly. The new 2D batching is something that will be really good for a lot of people. GD Native in HTML5, macOS that had a whole bunch of things. Of course, the WebXR stuff from David got put in here. The Godot physics engine is making a return. So we switched to using bullets at some point in time. And we kind of come back from that decision. So we're moving back to the Godot built-in physics engine. But that is a physics engine that hasn't really seen much love over the last couple of years. And that's changing. There is a lot of work going into the Godot physics engine. Now, a lot of that work is going to end up in Godot 4. So there's going to be threading enhancements, and there's going to be new collision shapes that it will support, and a lot of the collision handling is going to be improved. But there's also a lot of fixes in there that are actually ending up in Godot 3 as well. And then the new dynamic BVH. I'm not quite sure what BVH stands for, but it is the logic inside of the inside of the physics engine that is able to figure out which objects are close enough to each other they might be colliding, and therefore need to have the advanced, or the proper collision logic run to see if they're actually colliding. Because you can imagine, if you have 1,000 objects in your scene and you need to check each one of those against every other object to see whether they're colliding, that's a lot of checks. So there's some octree, or there used to be some octree based logic, and there's a new way of grouping objects, basically, and figuring out, okay, which objects Do we absolutely, we can say for sure that they're not even close to each other, therefore don't go and do the expensive collision checks. Just do it for, anything that's in proximity, and that makes a physics engine run a lot faster. So there's a new option in there, so that's worth people trying out. My favorite one isn't in here yet, I think, because I don't think that was merged yet when we had 324. I think that might make it in 326. Well, really RC6. Um, but then the newly renamed 3.3, which is background compiling and caching of shaders. So one of the big problems that Godot 3 has, that I actually did a video on that about a year ago, about how you can work around it, how you can kind of trick the system, but it is very difficult to get right. It's very easy to make one mistake and the whole house of cards falls apart, and that has to do with shader compilation. OpenGL does shader compilation on the fly, unlike what is the HSL something, the DirectX version. There you compile your shaders, and you deliver the compiled versions with your game. But with OpenGL, because it's multi-platform, that compilation is done once the shader is given to the OpenGL layer, and that created a hiccup whenever there was a shader that hadn't been used in your scene before. An object came into view of your camera for the first time and it happened to use a shader that wasn't used yet. Then that shader would get compiled, and that would give a small but noticeable hiccup in your frame rate. And of course, for some games that can get really annoying when that happens a few times when you load in a new level. So there's a project, and I think that is going to be in the new 3.3 release, where that is actually done on a thread. And bye bye hiccup. So yeah, it's a really cool technique. It uses, as long as the shader isn't compiled, it uses like a fallback shader, so you don't get that your object isn't being rendered. It might be rendered with a default color or something like that. And as soon as the shader is actually compiled, it'll just use that shader from then on, and you can tweak and change the behavior there. The other thing which it's doing is what's called a shader cache. So once a shader is compiled, it can actually store a binary version of that shader in a shader cache, which means that the second time you start your game, it doesn't need to compile that shader anymore. It has now cached the compiled version of that shader. So basically, the thing that actually works on DirectX, where it's shipped compiled, you can basically now create that. Hold on 1 second. If you guys would excuse me for 1 second, I need to go and help out my family for 1 minute. I'll be right back. Yep. Sorry about that, guys. Is my chat not working? Hold on. I am having a weird issue with my chat. 1 second. Okay, can I? Okay, how can I do that? Is it safe to just... Here we go. Yeah, see, I'm not seeing my chat. That's not good. Well, I'm just going to have to do it through here, I guess. Let's see. I wonder if my chat keeps running if I am pausing the video here. I don't know. I need to get a little tool to help me with my chat, I think, because that's really crazy. Anyway, sorry that I had to just walk out for a minute. I just needed to help my wife print some documents and scan them back in. For some weird reason, my other computer lost connection to the printer. Just weird. OEM printers, right? Let's see. Yeah, so HLSL. Oh well. Anyway, hello, it's Alex. How you going? Hi, Noobs Gaming. Hi, Ian. Rahul. Hi, Rod. Alrighty. This is weird. Can I I'm a little worried that if I refresh my YouTube page here that oh, it should be. Let me just try that. Okay, if my stream suddenly gets lost, then sorry, but let's just hope that this works. Yeah, it looks like it's happy enough with that. There we go. Now I can see my chat again. All right. I hope that was not an interruption for you guys. But yeah, we're having some technical difficulties. There we go. Ooh, that sounds like that's never fun. Hope that all goes well and that you get some good results out of that, and not bad ones. So hope you're doing okay with that. So yeah, we were talking about shader compilation. Well, one of the things that I'm hoping will indeed be in the 3.3 release. Because yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how well that works, and hoping that there's no unexpected behaviors there. So with that, we are going to go to 3.3 instead of 3.2. So there's not going to be a 3.2.4 release. There's going to be a 3.3 release. And with that, on the GitHub side, we now have a we will have a 3.3 branch when that version is released. So that will be 3.3.0. But the main development happening on 3 will be on the 3.x branch. That's why the header here says versioning change for Godot 3.x. And that's kind of, all explained here. So we're going to have a 3.3 branch once the actual release is out. And then we have a 3.x branch on which we are doing development. And the way this will work is that will allow us to do a 3.3.1, which will only have fixes. But if there is more new work going into the 3.x versions, because we right now just don't know how fast we'll have 4 out the door. And even when 4 is out the door, we might keep 3 alive for a certain amount of time, and maybe even accepting new features in that. That's a big question mark at this point in time, because that's usually what you do, right? Once you actually have a new major version, is you stop adding features to the minor version, or the previous major version, I should say. But that will allow us to do a 3.3.1 with just fixes, and then later on a 3.4.0 with additional features, in which case that eventually then becomes the leading release brand that only receives fixes, and we might have a 3.5 at some point in time. So that frees us up. Instead of having all these long-running 3.2 versions, we can actually get some patch versions out the door a bit quicker without losing the ability to do development. So that's why that whole change was made. So yeah, that's one of those things where we thought things would go in a different direction than they ended up going, and we needed to change course. That's just what happens. Well, glad to hear that there wasn't an interruption in stream as Alex. So that means that YouTube is, the thing that's on screen is just a client. I don't know how much of the stream is actually being routed through. I think it's just OBS sending it directly to YouTube and that streaming it out. And what I'm seeing on screen is just the end result of that. So, but I'm not, I use YouTube, but I'm not that much of an expert of it. Hi Ian, how you going? Hope you're doing well. Anyway, that was the whole change around the new number 3.3. So instead of us releasing 3.2.4, it's going to be Godot 3.3, which is going to be what 3.2.4 was going to be. It's just being able to manage the versions better and also make it much more clear that this is not a release with just fixes in it. This is actually a release with major new functionality in it. That's of course also, an important indication that, people need to know. And while we think so far that between 3.2.3 and 3.2.4, there isn't any serious breakage, with maybe the exception of the FBX importer, it's still a sign to people like, hey, be a little bit more wary. Don't just download it when it comes out and expect to be fine. Test it out. Make sure your game works properly in 3.3 first before going from 3.2.3 to 3.2.3 to 3.3. Oh, that's a tongue twister. I'm glad you're getting video editing done, Yen. I've been struggling this week to find time. I've got a whole bunch of things prepared around my the first video focusing on our dungeon crawler, and I just can't find the time to finish it. It's been a crazy week for me, but a good week. And this is one of the parts why it was a good week. And although this was this is actually something that I already prepared last week for the most part, it was just something that I wanted to get out the door as a news blurb. Now, obviously, for everybody who's following me and following my channel, this is old news. There's nothing new in this announcement. What is new for us is now that we're close to releasing 3.3, we're also close to making this an official plugin, because we needed changes that were ending up in 3.3 to actually get this plugin, officially released. So we wanted to announce it. Also, of course, the fact that we want to make OpenXR a much bigger thing in Godot 4. Any ETA for 3.3 final? That's always the age-old question, isn't it? It really depends on how well RC6 will be. I'm not quite sure when Akin is planning to actually release it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's today or tomorrow. Don't hold me to that though. I'm not privy of the release schedule. But obviously it depends on what's coming back from that. We really want this version to be out. It's also one of the reasons why we did these version changes, because it's been such a 6 release candidates for a version, and that's already after all the betas. So yeah, it's high time that we get that released. So yeah. Okay, for Quest, you on Godot 3, stay with the Quest plugin. First of all, the Quest plugin is probably the most mature VR plugin that we have right now, because it has been so well received, and there's such an active community using Godot, using the Quest with Godot. There's we have me, we have Fredia, we've got Holger. Michael, who is, well, mostly doing a lot of testing through his VR workout. By the way, just in case nobody is aware of VR workout, I would be surprised if you're following me if you're not aware of this. But if you're not aware of VR workout, go and check out Michael's work. It's probably one of the more high-profile Godot VR games that are out there right now. It runs on Steam, runs on itch. I think they've got it on itch.io. They've obviously got it running on the Quest. And he's just making a lot of noise with this thing. It's very well received so far. A lot of fitness channels have tried it out and have been raving about it. So it's pretty cool that this is out there. But yeah, so yeah, and the Holger's toolkit is really nice. Obviously Holger built his own version of a toolkit. I've got mine as well, which is more cross-platform, but he really focused on the Quest and was able to really do a lot of things specific to to how you work with the Quest, which is really, really nice. So if you're doing Quest development, absolutely Holger's toolkit is just miles ahead of other stuff. So yeah, for Quest development, I would stick with that plugin. Also, because one of the problems that we have right now with OpenXR, even though Oculus was very, that they were one of the first to actually have an OpenXR runtime. I think Microsoft and Monado were the first two, and then Valve and Oculus, they followed suit. The problem is that the OpenXR standard doesn't have a feature set on the Android platform yet. So for Linux and for Windows, they have made it part of the standard how you go and connect to the OpenXR framework. So that allows game developers like us to just do what they instruct us to do using their loaders that they give, and it will find the current active runtime on the operating system, and it'll go, hey, I'm going. And for Android, they didn't have that ready yet. So Oculus actually rolled their own solution for the time being. And obviously that's something that we've experimented with, but we haven't really done anything more with that, because we are really waiting on that proper Kronos defined way of connecting to everything on Android. Also because we have a working plugin. It's just it doesn't really make sense to jump the gun there. So for Quest right now, I would stick with the Quest plugin that we have. And OpenXR, on Linux it's really good. Thanks to Christoph. Especially also because so far on Linux, the only real option that you had was SteamXR. So now with OpenXR, you can use Collabora, Monado stack, and I think that uses OpenHMD in the background, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on. Why not bullets? What are we talking about with bullets? Yeah, Rahul, VR workout is it's been Michael's pride and joy. He's really put lots of time in there, and it's really well built. And seeing also how active he is on the XR Discord, so the Godot Discord, he's really pushed that, and yeah, it's a lot of fun to work with someone who's that enthusiastic about what he does. So yeah, pretty impressed with that. If you're talking about Bullet as far as a physics engine is concerned, we're just having too many troubles with it. There are really weird. Bullet was really designed for, for more research type physics, modeling things and stuff like that. When you look at games, there's a lot of things in Bullet where it's weird things happen. So yeah, we decided that we can do something that worked better. Don't ask me for the details. I've half followed the discussions around it. I'm just very excited that work is being done on the physics engine. You know, for me personally, physics is really important. Um, the really, really good VR games and applications are very physics based. So obviously, I really want a good physics engine to do things with, and I ran into a lot of the problems that we had with Bullet as well. And again, I don't know if that's Bullet itself, if that's our integration with Bullet, if it's because we misunderstood stuff around Bullet. I don't know, but I do know that we're hard at work improving it all, and I'm really looking forward to working with that. I haven't actually tried Oculus Link, so I'm not quite sure how well good, bad, or ugly it works. I've done most of the stuff that I've done on through Steam XR. Um, it works also with Oculus, but there are a few more things to fix around the Oculus environment. Oculus is they're a little bit more precise in some respects, and a little bit more unforgiving when you do something wrong or when you haven't implemented something yet. So there's a couple of things around pausing the application that doesn't work the way that it should, and things fall over in if your game ends up getting paused by Oculus. You know, that's the whole idea, of course, is that if you're in your game and you go back to the home screen because you need to do something or you need to interact with Oculus was part of the VR environment, your game gets paused. It basically gets told by Oculus through OpenXR, like, pause, please, we're taking over. And if you don't react properly to that, on Steam, they sort of go like, well, if you're ignoring it, we're still going to not do anything with you. We're going to do our own thing, and you're just going to waste resources. But on Oculus, it really sort of goes like, hey, you're not doing what you're told. Go away. So yeah, that's there's a few things that we still need to tweak there. So maybe that has something to do with the link. I'm not sure. The other thing, of course, is, and again, I'm only theorizing here because I don't, I use my Index most of the time, and when I test with Oculus, I use my Rift. Of course, with the Oculus Link, what is happening is that it's capturing or getting the screens, the render images from your game engine, and it's compressing that, sending it over a wire, and then decompressing it on the headset and then displaying it. So yeah, it's possible that something gets overloaded there and things start to fall apart. I don't know. It's possible. Well, kind of, yeah. Kind of holding a gun, but for good reasons, I think. I think it is something that we, it's just that when you look at pause logic, when you really look at stopping your game from rendering scenes, it's the same with phones, right? When you get a call, you're supposed to pause your game as well. So there is support for that in Godot, but calling that from a plugin is still a little bit iffy. There's one or two things that we still need to solve there. So we're basically pausing the actual submission of frames to OpenXR itself. So as far as OpenXR is concerned, we're paused, but we want to do a little bit more. We want to make sure that, I think when you look at Quest, we actually solved it by Quest telling the game, hey, go and pause, and you actually need to put a little bit of code in your app to actually react to that and do the proper pause logic that Godot does, and it's something that I really want to improve on in Godot 4 as well. Yeah, Jan, I do have to admit, having played Wipeout in VR on my PlayStation, they actually did a really good job in implementing it in a way that most people don't really get motion sickness unless you're really prone to it. But yeah, it is the type of game that that could easily make you motion sick. Hi, Azihil. Not that much. We're just catching up on some news. So just to continue here, so yeah, we've had the OpenXR plugin for a little while. Kudos to Christoph Haag for actually starting that. He, from our work with OpenHMD, I met the OpenHMD guys a couple of years ago, and we did a plugin for them with Godot. And because that link already existed, Christoph also working on OpenHMD, they used that logic to do their initial showcase. And they actually, because I don't know if you guys remember, but I actually did a tutorial on my YouTube channel 2.5 years ago, taking Kalnau's port of the Sponza demo. Just in case people don't know about Sponza demo, but that's this scene that you probably will all recognize because this has been around for a long time. Can't remember. I think this came from CryEngine that used this as a test scene and made it publicly available. So we have a version running in Godot, and I did a tutorial a little while ago to add VR support to this, just to showcase how you did that. And they took that all and used their prototype OpenXR plugin at that point in time, which was basically the OpenHMD plugin, but converted to talk to OpenXR. And they showed that off at GDC in 2019, if I remember correctly. That was really cool. So it's been around for a while. It's actually, this plugin has been around for a while. It's just that for the longest time, it just had very basic functionality. It could render. I think at some point it did track the controllers, but it only supported 1 or 2 buttons. And that mainly also because Christoph's attention is more on doing all the OpenXR work itself, not, he kind of did the plugin as a side project. So yeah, sometime last year I talked to him about extending it because we wanted to do more with OpenXR. Around the time that both Valve and Oculus suddenly announced their OpenXR plugins or runtimes, and sort of went like, hey, well, maybe we should do something more of that. So I took the work that he had, and I kind of added Windows support to it, cleaned up a few things, started working more and more together with him. So he's still very much involved and doing a lot of work on it as well. And it's been a lot of fun doing that stuff together. So we're really using the OpenXR plugin as a test bed. Most of the functionality is in there right now. It is working almost on par with the OpenVR plugin. It's almost feature equal. So you can really swap those two out. So if you target Steam, you can really choose between these two. I think if you target Oculus, there is a little bit more work to do before this is ready to replace the Oculus plugin. And like I said, until it's actually already in here that Christoph is working on the experimental Android support. Once that spec is finalized and it actually becomes part of the OpenXR spec officially, and Oculus switches over to that instead of using their proprietary loader, we will make sure that the plugin works on Oculus as well. But I don't think that in Godot 3 the OpenXR plugin is going to be replacing the Quest plugin. There's just too much work that went into the Quest plugin to make that sensible. For Godot 4, it's a whole different ballgame. We really want to do a lot more work, a lot tighter integration with OpenXR for Godot 4. So the next part of this announcement, I couldn't resist putting it in because I actually have the Microsoft runtime as a choice in the environment. There's actually a little switch that you can switch between the runtimes that you have installed. Just easy for testing, just a little convenience thing. And Microsoft is in there. If you got the Microsoft runtime installed, which is pretty much by default nowadays on Windows, you can start it up, and the first thing that it says is OpenGL is not supported. And that's something that we wanted that to work for the longest time. So Microsoft not supporting OpenGL in their environment, and specifically not supporting OpenGL on Universal Windows Platform, which is what you need to do to go to Xbox or HoloLens, it's been a bit of a pain in the butt. Now, Godot runs on Xbox. Might come as a surprise to some people who are not aware that we actually have console support in Godot. Godot runs on an Xbox, even though an Xbox only supports DirectX. And it does that through this library called Angle. Now, Angle was created by Microsoft at some point in time, long time ago. And unfortunately, it's being kind of abandoned by Microsoft at some point in time. And I don't know the story behind that. But it was around the time that the original HoloLens came out, because I was real happy with it and trying to get it all to work. Because they have a special holographic branch on it where they did all the stereoscopic implementations in here to make sure that you could do stereoscopic rendering. And I was trying to get it to work, and I couldn't get it to work, and then all of a sudden everything went quiet on that front. So we hit a bit of a dead end there. Also because I just didn't have more time to spend on it. But it's been a long-standing wish of mine to have Godot running on the HoloLens. Now, things have kicked up in the last couple of days, which is really cool. And one of the reasons for that is that Angle isn't actually dead. It's just the Microsoft version is a little dead. Google actually picked up Angle a couple of years ago. And they've made it one of their core technologies to make sure that they can deploy Chrome on a whole bunch of things that don't do OpenGL natively. So there is an Angle. It is this was an open source project as far as I understand. So they just took over the source and they started to build it. The big thing there was that Universal Windows Platform was always a bit of, oh, we don't need that, so we don't support it. And then it kind of got supported again and kind of in limbo right now. But there is one of the Godot contributors, or one of the regular contributors, is playing around with that and trying to see if he can port over the current Angle implementation that we're using for UEP over to the Google version. And that's starting to work. So the next step there is to see if that actually runs on the HoloLens. And if that runs on the HoloLens, we can take the next step and see if we can actually get our OpenXR plugin to talk to that version of Angle, and maybe it can work. Now, like I said in this introduction, is I don't have a HoloLens, so I can't really look into it very much. But there is some discussion going on right now to see if we can get the right people together and maybe give this another try, because that would be really cool. Obviously, we can only go so far with this, because eventually everything will go to Godot 4. And then, of course, we start over, because now all of a sudden we have a Vulkan backend. And guess what? HoloLens doesn't do Vulkan either. So, although there are some rumors going around that there might be, at some point, support for Vulkan. It is something that I've heard in the rumor mill being said. I don't know how much truth there is to that, or whether that's just wishful thinking of certain people, including me. But who knows? That might become a thing. If not, hopefully a good Vulkan to DirectX compatibility layer will become available. Just like Molten VK, just for those who don't know, Molten VK is a compatibility layer that converts all Vulkan instructions to Metal instructions, the equivalent Metal instructions, and allows us to run Vulkan applications on iOS, which is kind of important, seeing that Microsoft dropped OpenGL support, chose to do their own thing because they didn't want to wait for Vulkan. They didn't have the time to wait for it, so they introduced Metal, which is their own GPU and API. And they have no plans as a result to support Vulkan. But Molten VK to the rescue, so that's pretty cool. What are we talking about? Cats playing harps videos. I missed something in chat, guys. Okay, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to catch up on all of that stuff. I'm sure it'll have been fun. Yeah, so Rahul, the original angle from Microsoft was specifically to get OpenGL support on universal Windows platform. That was the whole reason that Microsoft did this. Because, you did have OpenGL support on Windows, you just didn't have it on universal Windows platform. So on a Windows machine, you're fine. But then on the Windows Phone or on the HoloLens or on the Xbox, you couldn't run it. So, and again, I don't know why they stopped it. Whether it is that they just said people go and do your DirectX stuff, or whether it is because Google eventually started doing their thing. And then with Google, it's for the longest time I thought Google had dropped it because it's nowhere on their main site. And then I learned that they are still or are supporting it again, but it's just not being publicized very well. So yeah, something that I really hope is going to be an avenue there. I wish I had a cat, guys. I used to have 5 cats when I still lived in Holland, and now we have birds. So I can't have cats anymore. Cats are my favorite animal. Little tidbit there. Little trivia. Start a fund me to well, you can start a fund me to prove that a virtual world is flat, because that's kind of true. But hint hint. Virtual worlds. Oh, having cats is a barrier to you trying VR. Yeah. Um, my best advice is make sure you have a room where you can close the door. I'm planning pretty soon to redo the space that I'm in right now. Because right now I've got a green screen behind me, and what you guys are seeing is just a photo that's actually looking this way. So what you're seeing behind me is actually in front of me. Yeah, I'm thinking about rejigging everything so that I actually have, so that I actually can get rid of the green screen, or at some point maybe get one of those Elgato ones that you can raise and lower. Because one of the things that I really hate is I've got my index connected to my computer and I've got my lighthouses, but because of my green screen, my second lighthouse is actually behind the green screen. So very often I've got it in a corner here when I'm doing VR work on stream. And I screw up the whole setup that allows me to actually play games. So while I have the room in this room to actually play a proper VR game, there's so much work that I need to do in putting my my lighthouses back in place, and setting up my room scale again and all that sort of stuff. I just don't bother, and that's a real shame, because I've played. I think I'm about 70% through Half-Life Alyx, which I absolutely adore that game. But because of the whole setup, I'm just not playing it, and I really want to finish it. I really want to get to the end of Half-Life. And I actually want to play more VR games anyway. So I really want to reorganize my room so that I have that play space available, and it's permanently available for these sort of things. Also, for me doing my VR work, right now I am I'm coming to the last part of this announcement. Obviously I'm now funded by Facebook Reality Labs to actually work on this stuff. I spent, most of February on all this stuff, making sure that the OpenXR plugin is to a point that we're happy, and that can be part with the 3.3 release. Also because I wanted to use it as a test bed to get a bunch of experience in certain parts of OpenXR that I hadn't really dived in yet, so that we can actually do the proper thing in Godot 4. However, at this point in time, the first thing that I'm doing, the first big thing that I'm doing, and most of my time right now this week will spend just reading through code and trying to figure out stuff, and having talks with John about how things work, and then going back and just trying stuff out to learn how the Vulkan renderer is put together, so that we can actually create a toned down Vulkan renderer. And I think I talked about that on my last stream as well, where the current Vulkan renderer that we have, it's a clustered-based renderer, so it does clustering to do filter out lights, and it has the new SDFGI logic in there, and it has a whole bunch of really high-tech stuff. But they're all stuff that work really well on a desktop GPU, but they grind to a halt on a mobile GPU, and they grind to the halt on a Quest. Kind of important for what we're doing. So yeah, well, I could go full steam ahead with what's currently in Godot 4 and OpenXR and get everything to working perfectly on my index, but we want to have this broader attack. Now, the other thing, of course, is having done all the work in Godot 3 for all these years, I'm still pretty new to Godot 4. I'm still pretty new to how the new renderer is structured. So diving into the new one and sort of creating a stripped down version for mobile, reusing as much as I can so that we don't have code duplication, but we have, just the core logic that steers what happens in what order is, changed. That to me is a vital experience. Unfortunately, a very lengthy experience because there's a steep learning curve. But I want to get to a point that, I didn't just want to duplicate the renderer that we have right now and then just strip out what we don't want and put it. I really want to know how every single part of that renderer works. So I'm really just taking it apart. It's literally like, taking an engine out of the car, pulling it apart, every last nut and bolt, and then figuring out how to put it back together again. Just so that I know how it works. And that just takes time. But I think it's really important because I need to know that structure so that I can start adding the features in there that we need for VR. Because that's one of the things that became clear a couple of months ago when we started this journey. Originally, my plan was to add OpenXR in the same, or add VR support in Godot 4 in the same way that we did with 3. And we really can't get away with that anymore. We have to add certain things to the render engine in support of VR first before we can even add VR support to Godot 4. Because if we do it the other way around, and I know that there's a couple of people out there trying that, which is really good because it does give us really vital experience and vital feedback. It's not the right approach. So that's something where I am, diving into that right now. And unfortunately, it means a little bit of, it means that this work has to be done first before we finally get to see something in OpenXR for Godot 4. But I think that in the long run, it'll turn out to be the right decision. So, yeah, that's what we're working on right now. So that's the whole announcement that we put online. Again, for us, everybody who's been following me and everybody who's been watching my stream, this should mostly be old news. But because we never had, a lot of people were still surprised to find out, really, Godot has OpenXR support? We didn't even notice. And like I said in this, we were actually one of the first ones to this, 2019 at GDC, Collabora showing off their stuff, running Godot and running the Swanza demo. But it was never announced on the official Godot engine side. It might have been mentioned in passing on the Godot Twitter, but yeah, I just especially because I'm now hired, I just wanted to get this out the door, make everybody aware of this is what we're working on, this is how far we are, this is what's available right now around OpenXR, and you can actually use this plugin and start playing around with it and giving us feedback. That's the other thing. I want more people using this. So like I can't remember who it was in chat who mentioned. That they had problems running it with the link, the Oculus Quest over a link cable. That's important to know because that's something that we need to address and need to look at. I need a bit of water there. So the other thing, a little segue here. So for everybody who wants to try it out, the OpenXR plugin is currently on the Godot VR GitHub page. Something stuck in my throat. And you can simply go to releases here and just grab the latest one. And if you download the zip file, it has everything in there to get started. So that's something that we started doing with all the plugins that we have right now. Is we have GitHub compiling everything, packaging it up, and you suddenly have a deployable zip file, which is kind of neat because it means that you don't have to compile it yourself. Now, eventually, we'll upload that to the asset library, but we're holding off with that for two reasons. One is you need 3.3 to be released before anybody can really play with it. So, the people who are fine downloading the release candidates, or, the last 3 to 4 release candidate 5 will work as well. But officially, we're saying it's going to be 3.3. So obviously, we need to have that in place before it makes sense to even upload it to the asset library. But the other thing is, the asset library requires the files to be put in a GitHub repository in a certain way. And this has caused a lot of confusion over the time. So when you, for instance, look at OpenVR, this is our OpenVR driver, but the asset is actually here. That's the one that you download. And this is just a copy of the releasable version. And the same applies to the Oculus plugin and to the Quest plugin. We have two GitHub repositories, one with the source, and then one purely for this asset. Excuse me. My eye is being annoying. And I'm still trying to see if we can get something done that instead of needing to do this, we can actually use those releases to link that up to the asset library. So I'm talking to Kalanoy about that, and seeing if we can make that go. Rodrigo. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the Earth is a nice sphere, but in VR land or in game land, yeah, it's pretty flat. It's easier to have a flat world to work with than a round world to work with, because you can just your gravity is just pointing down. It's not pointing to a center. A little optimization there. So yeah, And Jan, it is I'm it's I just read that you are already about to go to work. So yeah, go and have fun. Go make tutorials and videos and stuff like that. So hope to see you next week. Rodrigo, so OpenXR is an API to talk to VR headsets, so that you can render to VR headsets and get information about the VR controllers and all that sort of stuff. But it's an open standard, so it's made or defined by the same people who are behind Vulkan and OpenGL and WebGL and God knows what else Kronos is involved with. And it means that us as game developers, if we build a game that talks to OpenXR, it will run on any ecosystem that supports OpenXR. So you don't have to write specifically for Steam VR or specifically for Oculus, or support both ecosystems by duplicating things, etc., etc. So that's what OpenXR is. It's just and it's really not. And that's actually one of the things that I put in the beginning in the introduction here as well. One of the things that surprised me the most looking at this, normally when you get into these sort of things, and you have a whole bunch of companies that are competitors of each other trying to come up with a standard, they're either fighting for their standard and they don't really want to listen to what the needs of the other people are, or they come up with the weakest link. And then nobody follows the standard. And that kind of happened with OpenGL. When you look at OpenGL 1.0, that kind of fell apart because of that reason. It wasn't until OpenGL started becoming a flagship feature of phones, thanks to Android and thanks to iOS, that all of a sudden there was a resurgence in here, and everybody started to invest in this technology, and OpenGL actually became, caught up to DirectX and started to really become a solid API. And the same now with Vulkan, where all that expertise has gone into Vulkan, and you actually have a really good graphics API to work with. OpenXR, looking at how the spec is put together, you can really see that these Microsoft and Valve and Oculus have put their brightest minds together, and they actually came up with a standard that takes the best practices of all three and combine them into an API. And I was really surprised by how well that's put together. And There's things that I would have done differently, but that's with any open standard. You would always have, people who have difference of opinion of how certain things would work, because you always have compromises. But on a whole, I love it. I think it's really well thought out. I think it's really well put together. And like I said, it has the strengths of all platforms. It's not like Oculus certainly said, because Oculus was always the strongest one when it came to the way that the rendering has been put together and trying to get everything as performant as possible. Well, all that knowledge has been put into this standard. They didn't just say, well, we're going to keep that to ourselves and make sure that our ecosystem is better than everybody else's. No, they put that in, which is really, really cool. um, so Jan, is it just the tutorial videos that you do nowadays, or are you still also doing your normal teaching job? Because I vaguely remember that you had your own teaching. And plug your company all you want, mate, because you make cool stuff. So don't worry about it. You want to tell people in chat where to find you, and I don't think you can post links on YouTube chat for some reason, which is really annoying. But yeah, give them a search word and they'll find you because you got some cool stuff. All right. How are we doing on time? 10. Let's give it a half an hour more and then we start doing some programming. So yeah, I just this was actually a bit of a segue from Microsoft HoloLens, because like I said, I've been talking to a bunch of people this week, to see if there's any chance of revamping, trying to get OpenXR to work on with Godot on the HoloLens through using Angle as a library. So yeah, I ended up talking to some of the guys at Microsoft, or one person in particular, and I ended up trying AltSpace for the first time today because I got invited into one of his presentations that he does from time to time. And of course, there's lots of these types of VR programs, or networks, or whatever you want to call them, around. Facebook, I think, has got Horizons. I think Hub, is that Google? Might be mixing things up. Obviously Valve in their own Valve Home has got a bunch of things. So there's more and more of these coming out. VR chat. Do I really want to name that one? Because VR chat always gives me weird vibes because of some of the things that go on there. A lot of people pretending to be anime characters over there. AltSpace seems to be one that focuses on somewhat more serious stuff, which is kind of cool. So yeah, I had my first AltSpace experience today, which was really cool, and it's actually one of the things that I am contemplating doing or organizing at some point in time, once I get a bit more proficient with this. Is actually doing a meetup on AltSpace at some point in time, and talk some Godot VR on AltSpace. That sounds like a cool thing to do at some point in time. So who knows? Jan used to be doing Udemy, yeah. Are you still doing it on Udemy, Jesper? I thought you switched to another platform. Can't remember. I can't keep up with all these changes. So yeah, also a small segue into OpenHMD. So I did a plugin for OpenHMD a couple of years ago, and actually spent some time this week to put all the automatic build logic in there, bring everything up to the latest version of OpenHMD. So for those people who are not aware of OpenHMD, OpenHMD is a open source alternative to all the VR SDKs. So while OpenXR is an open source API, but in which people can still build their proprietary runtimes. So like Oculus building their proprietary runtime, Valve building their proprietary runtime, Microsoft building their proprietary runtime. OpenHMD tries to build all the logic in an open source fashion. So everything from how you communicate with controllers and how you track headsets and all that sort of stuff, doing that in an open source way. So it's a pretty ambitious project. As a result, they're also a little bit behind what the proprietary guys are doing, because they're not privy to a lot of these stuff. They need to reverse engineer most of this stuff. But it's a pretty cool thing, and it's also what Collabara uses to support a whole bunch of platforms on Linux, or a whole bunch of headsets. But we have a native plugin that directly uses OpenHMD. And the OpenHMD guys actually use this a lot to test their stuff. So that actually is going to change all pretty soon. So yeah, I brought it up to the latest version of OpenHMD. When we go to OpenHMD itself, can I go there like this? Yeah, I can. So yeah, it runs on, for macOS guys, this is definitely something to check out, because that's a nice thing. This is open source, so it's compilable on multiple platforms. Seeing that VR is very poorly supported on OS X. Valve for a little while had Steam working, or Steam VR working on OS X. I don't know what the state of that is nowadays, whether that's still being maintained, whether that still only works for the Vive, or whether there's other headsets that now work there. I have no idea. I know that Apple was never really that pushy about supporting it. So these guys do work on it. Interesting enough, still, if there's anybody from OpenHMD listening along, where's the Godot link here? Come on, guys. You guys have been using this since 2019. But I'm trying to look at, where do they have the list of headsets that they support? Well, it's not in there, but I can go over here. And you can see there's a whole list of things that they support. So this, can't remember who, 3 Glasses, but they support that. They've got some Android drivers. This is for having Android tethered to your machine, to your computer, and using Android as a PC connected device. Not quite sure about that one. They support the Vive. They support Nolo, which is just tracked devices. Oculus Rift, Rift S, PSVR. This is actually, it's a bit homebrew and hacky. You need to trick your PSVR to thinking that there's still a PS4 attached, but you can then connect it to the HDMI output of your laptop or PC and use your PSVR as a headset. And I think they're even at a point right now that they are supporting the controllers, but yeah, not quite sure about VR Tech, Windows MR. So they've got support for all these devices, but it's all support to a certain level, because they're trying to reverse engineer a whole bunch of things. I think they've got now tracking on the Vive and tracking on the Rift S working. But yeah, it is a pretty cool thing to check out. So yeah. Yeah, Apple indeed does like to go their own ways nowadays. So it's a choice. Personally, regardless of all the news that's coming out around, the rumored VR headset that Apple's doing, I personally believe, and this is purely theorizing, purely conjecture, I think Apple is only interested in AR. I don't actually think they're really that interested in VR. They might do VR as a stepping stone to get people developing against their SDK. So which they have had our ARKit for a while now. So a lot of people have, built stuff around that with, there's a couple of cool things about it, but I still think it's not comparable to what people are doing on the HoloLens or even in Magic Leap. But it's still, it's a really cool little ecosystem. But I think for Apple, it isn't the current AR games that are important for them. It is, what is important to them is all these developers getting experience with that style of API and thinking about spatial awareness and how to interact with real world objects. So that once they have their AR glasses out, once that technology is at a point where they really are happy of releasing that as a consumer device, They have all these developers with this knowledge of building these things that is very translatable to now doing it on a set of glasses. And I think that's the same game that they're playing with their VR headsets. I don't actually think that they're planning to conquer that market. They might. Again, I'm just theorizing here and I have no idea what their choices and decision making is. But I have a feeling that all that they're trying to do with that is get developers on board, and get them experienced with their SDKs around, 3D stuff, VR stuff, XR stuff, I should say. So that once they have that device that they believe will conquer the market, they have all these people already experienced enough to then start building stuff. Right. That's what I feel is their game plan. But I don't see Apple suddenly cornering the VR market or suddenly, doing what they did with the iPhone, but then in the VR market. Not to a small extent, because I believe that Oculus already did. I think that is probably one of the real differences when you look at the situation with phones and now the situation with VR. When the iPhone came out, yes, there were lots of phones on there. Yes, there were smartphones already. I had the old Nokias, the big screens and stuff like that, which are really cool and high tech for the days. But there was nothing with the usability and the form factor. The smartphones were business phones, right? That's what they were. They were targeted at managers and CEOs and those sort of people. A very specific market that the form factor was geared at. What Apple did right was they saw that the big market was the consumer market, and the consumers at that point in time were just using phones to make phone calls. And they weren't using it as a personal computing device. And I think that's where Apple got it all right and kind of broke open that market with the iPhone. And I think when you look at the Quest, Oculus did that. To me, that's what the Quest is. In the VR world, I love my Index. I think it's an amazing device. I love my old Rift, which of course is, first gen VR. As a VR enthusiast, those devices are amazing. And I don't mind needing a powerful computer and an expensive headset. Well, I got lucky that Valve gave me my Index, but it's the sort of thing that I would have saved up for to own. But that's a minority, right? That's a real VR enthusiast who do that. A normal person isn't going to spend $3,000 on a computer and then another $1,000 on a headset just to play Half-Life Alyx. They're not gonna spend that much money just to play one game. And the Quest, in my eyes, was the first device that changed that, where you suddenly have this package that you buy for $400, $500, all in, polished, something that, you take it out of the box. The whole experience is very polished. It doesn't feel like a developer device. It doesn't feel like an enthusiast device. It feels like an end user device, a consumer device. This thing that Apple historically has been really good at. And I think Oculus followed that pretty well. And also having everything in place, right? Having their store in place, having vendors in place that already delivered great games. They wouldn't have been able to do the same trick 2 years ago before they released the Quest. The timing was really good. They were able to approach people who had made really good PC VR games and get them to optimize it for the Quest. So they had a catalog the moment that the device came out. And then there are a few things that of course Facebook did that have blemished that reputation. Well, that's up to them to learn from. But I think on a whole, it's such a strong device in that market. I don't see another device conquering that anytime soon. They're gonna be lots of copycats pretty soon. I'm pretty sure. But I think AR is where all bets are still off. Microsoft is making amazing progress with the HoloLens. I think Microsoft made the right choices in the AR market, going after business you know, where there's much more application for AR than in the consumer market. Yeah, I think that's the thing that the mistake that the market has made around AR is they look at consumer purpose for AR. You wear your glasses and you get your vision augmented with the stuff around you. Some really cool conceptual videos on YouTube where they show that off. You're walking down you're walking down a street and you get directions in your field of view, or a friend of yours is walking near and there's an indicator like, hey, that's the friend that you're meeting up with. He's over there. Or you look at in a shop window and it recognizes the shop and it gives you information about the shop, or you walk past a historical building and it gives you that sort of thing. That's the sort of stuff that you see, and I don't think that's appealing enough for a lot of people to start wearing glasses all of a sudden. Not for me. I'm already wearing glasses. I'm used to wearing glasses. I don't care. But most people, I don't think people are going to get switched on to that anytime soon. There has to be such an important function that it adds that we really don't have yet today for that product to sell. And I don't think we have that yet. We don't have the right technology. We don't have the right use case. While in business, we do. When you look at AR in business, there are amazing opportunities in business where augmented reality can enhance productivity of a worker. You look at warehouse management. You're walking around in the warehouse and your glasses are superimposing where things are in a warehouse. Product design, being able to be in a room with other people and have the virtual, Toyota is doing this already, where they have a virtual car in front of them and everybody's walking around the car and they're changing things in the car design as they're walking around this car. That's where the money lies right now in AR, and I think Microsoft does the right thing there. Rahul, indeed. And all power to them. There are people who really are into that sort of stuff. I know one or two myself who I've befriended through this whole VR experience. Who, yeah, they love nothing more than to play their favorite anime character in VR chat and do weird things. Well, all the power to them. It's not my thing, but now that actually reminds me. Do I have that anywhere here? I should have opened that one. Ready, player, me. Ta-da! Yes, I remember it. This was introduced to me today, which is something I haven't played with yet. I've only just looked at it. But all these sort of tools, right? When you go into Altspace for the first time, you have to set up a character. Same with VR chat. Same with these guys actually take your picture. You send in a picture, and you get an avatar that looks like you, which is freaking amazing. And this is like an API that they've got to this whole system. So there's now someone trying to create a Godot plugin for this. So that if you have an avatar that you created in Ready Player Me and you've got an account with Ready Player Me, then you can use that avatar in the game that you've just downloaded. So that's something that I want to experiment with pretty soon as well. The thing with PSVR, I love my PSVR. It's the first VR headset that I bought. The biggest problem that Sony has with the PSVR is they were first. Yeah, you had the the Rift, and you had the the Vive on PC, but they were expensive and hard to get. And then suddenly, Sony brought out this really polished headset, but low resolution, because that's all that the PS4 could do. And I think they underestimated at that point in time how important the controllers were going to be. So the fact that they repurposed the Move controllers, that's probably the only decision that they will probably regret by now. But the biggest problem was they released this device, and I literally went out to the store and bought one the day that it came out, and I loved it. But there were, the problem that they had, they didn't have the games. That was what was and logical as well, because none of the big studios were doing VR games yet, because they first wanted to see VR succeed before they would jump on board. So it was generally indie developers who were doing VR games. So there's one or two big studios that they approached that they managed to get some really good games with. Then you had, of course, EVE Online that did EVE Valkyrie, and so I got the demo disc with the PSVR, and EVE Valkyrie was one of the first things that I played, and I loved it absolutely. I think I played that mission 100 times. That one mission that they have on that demo disc, and then the real game came out, and I finally got the real game. And while it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, I don't enjoy playing these games as multiplayer games. And that was where the focus lay, right? So you had your PSVR. There were one or two really good games on it. There were a bunch of good experiences that sort of showed off what the promise of this device were, but you played them a couple of times, and after a day or two, you're bored with them. And then there was nothing. And my PSVR ended up in the cupboard, and I started playing with my Rift again. And for the longest time, I sort of went like, okay, well, that was fun, and because the PSVR itself, the headset, is still my favorite headset even today, right? It doesn't have the resolution and stuff like that, but as far as the form factor goes, as far as the comfort goes, I can wear a PSVR for hours on end. I played through Farpoint, which is also, with the gun. The gun is so cool. But Farpoint is really the only good game that you can really play with it. They had. I still need to do the multiplayer one. Can't remember. Firewall. I still need to play that one. But again, I'm not really interested in multiplayer. I want big single player campaigns to play in VR, like Half-Life Alyx. So yeah, I still, form factor wise, I love it. It's one of the most comfortable headsets that I own. So I put it in the cupboard. Well, it's actually still attached to my computer, but it's just lying there, or my TV. But it's just lying there in the corner. I'm not really. It's actually my daughter who plays racing games on it. She's a big fan of racing games. Who use it the most. And then about a year ago, I actually checked the store, and all of a sudden I went like, there's hundreds and hundreds of games on the store now. But because people had the PSVR and played with it, and then ran out of games and put it in the cupboard and didn't look back, they didn't see that in all that time this great library of games came out. Because also, you go to your local game store. For us, it's CB Games here in Australia. You don't find the VR games. They're just not on the shelves. They might have some of the very popular titles. So you'll find Astrobot. You find... can't even think of anything. Resident Evil 7. Which is amazing, by the way, in PlayStation VR. Amazingly scary. You just don't see it. It's not visible. And that's my only worry with the PlayStation VR 2 that is now rumored. Obviously, Sony now announced the new controllers. The controllers look amazing. They went 360 on that, or 180, or whatever you want to call it. From those crappy Move controllers to industry-leading tracked controllers that are on par with the Vive, with the Index controllers. Touche, Sony, you did the right thing there, I think. So combined with how powerful the PlayStation 5 is, hopefully the headset, by all looks of things, being an inside-out tracking system like the Rift and the Quest and the Reverb, Sony potentially has a winner on their hands. And now with this plethora of games existing, if they can convince big studios to make sure that their games are available on launch for, and of course they're gonna have all the basic ones. Beat Saber already runs, and I'm pretty sure Pistol Whip will be available from day one, and all those sort of things. But I want a Half-Life Alyx on my PlayStation 5, right? If they can get Half-Life Alyx, and if they can get Boneworks as launch games for PlayStation 5 PSVR, yeah, that could get interesting. Yeah, XR is just a buzzword for VR and AR combined. Microsoft called it MR. For some reason, they didn't want to jump on the XR bandwagon. I don't know why. But it's just, instead of having to say AR and VR, XR is just easier. The same thing with the X-Wing tie-in. Now, I have Squadrons now. I've played it one time. I really want to find time to properly play Squadrons. But I had a problem. I bought Squadrons on Steam. Then, because it wasn't really clear if you bought Squadrons through the Epic Store, whether the VR version was separate from the non-VR version. It was really unclear on their store. So I didn't want to run that risk, so I got it on Steam. But then you install it, and then it still needs to get an Epic account. Or, no, an Origin account, sorry. Or EA's Origin. You get thrown into VR, but then it gives you an interface that doesn't work for VR to set up your account. It's just not. So I actually quit it out, and then I started the non-VR version, and I set up my account there. Then I went back into the VR one, and I found out that, because I was using my joystick, I found out that they had the X's the wrong way around. But you had to play through the whole tutorial first before you could even get to the point where you could change it. So I had to quit out again and find my way into the settings windows before. By the time I finally played the first mission, I was so fed up with it. And it's such a shame, because it's exactly the game that I want to play. It's the reason why I started working on my own space VR game, because I love the X-Wing add-on, the little thing that they did, the little tie-in thing that they did with Battlefield. Yeah, I still want to get back into Squadrons, and I actually want to play Squadrons because it is beautifully made, but they somehow dropped the ball on that, and I can't put my finger on it. I think it's also to do with that the cutscenes aren't actually VR. It feels very disjointed, and I don't know why. It's weird. It's a shame. As far as the VR rumors for Series X for Xbox, Microsoft, what the hell are you doing? That's my reaction. I honestly, I don't get Microsoft. It's such low-hanging fruit for Microsoft, right? Xbox is running Windows. Okay, universal Windows platform, but basically anything that you can compile on Windows, especially if it's a DirectX-based game, runs on an Xbox. I cannot think of a technical limitation why you wouldn't be able to hook up an Oculus Quest Oh, sorry, an Oculus Rift. A Rift S to an Xbox. I don't think I don't think there is a technical limitation. The limitation lies in decision making at Microsoft. The fact that they, for whatever reason, have decided they don't want it, or that we're not ready for it yet. And I just don't get it. I really don't. And especially, I kind of get it with the original Xbox One, where you could maybe say, well, everybody is expecting PC quality VR games, but on the PS4, Xbox One generation hardware, you would have to tone it down in the same. Sony had that option because they built their own headset that purely worked for the PS4, so they could limit those expectations, which is also one of the reasons why the PSVR has a 640 resolution LCD screen, so smaller than even a Rift at those days. Well, if you hook up a Rift S to this, you suddenly, the expectation is that you render out at that resolution, which I guess for the Xbox One is a problem. But for the Xbox Series, even the S should be more than powerful enough to run a VR game. Especially the most popular ones. Beat Saber, Pistol Whip, Box VR. What's it called? The thing where you are, serving the robots thing. All those games would run without any problems on an Xbox, and it wouldn't be hard for most of these games to even make that switch. Most of these games are already built on Windows. Most of these games are built in Unreal and Unity and already run on DirectX hardware. I don't get it. I just don't get it. I really just don't get it. There is no reason why they don't just allow it. And again, with the rumors, it really sounds to me like they've even got the stuff in there to make it work. I wouldn't be surprised if the whole Windows MR system is already in the and again that might be the only reason that they don't want to use Windows MR, because they didn't really target the consumer market with those headsets, and it's really only the HP Reverb that is a good option, because only then you have the good quality controllers. And they might not want to run the Oculus SDK on that hardware. They might only want to support WMR headsets or something like that. That's the only thing I can think of as a or Steam VR. Installing Steam VR on an Xbox might be an issue, right? That's the only thing I can think of that could be a reason for them to hold it back. But I think it's a dumb choice because it's such a no-brainer. It to me, it doesn't sound like it would cost them anything. So yeah, I honestly, I don't get it. I really don't get it. VR plus Connect. Actually, no kidding. There are people who are using Connect to do full body tracking. There's Connect plugins for VR chat that if you want to do, because this is the thing, right? With VR chat, people are doing TikTok dance videos on VR chat. They, especially when you're working with Vives and you can get the HTC trackers, you put some HTC trackers on your feet so that you've got your hands tracked with your controllers, your feet tracked with the trackers. You get some inverse kinematics magic going on, and you've got full body tracking, sort of. And they've got that on VR chat, and people are doing dances and stuff like that. So, and then recording themselves in VR doing the dances and putting it on TikTok or on YouTube or whatever. It's a whole big thing nowadays. And there's people doing that with Connect. The Connect can do the whole full body tracking for you. So they hook up a Connect to a PC and they use that for the full body tracking. Then they combine that with the tracking data coming from the headset. And they animate their VR chat avatar that way. and then they film themselves. It's hilarious. So, so yeah, you know, it's not my thing, but I think it's cool. I think it's cool. People get so much enjoyment out of it. So, yeah. Okay, so I've got a 3.3 build here. We are still, I'm still sticking with the latest version. Can you see that on the back? Yeah, 3.3 RC Custom built earlier today. So let's hope that nothing ended up in there that's going to break what we're doing today. And we are back in our little dungeon games. Yeah, the future of VTubers. And the other thing that I really want to get into that I just haven't had any time to really look into, and I'm talking to the guys behind it, is Live, where basically you film yourself with a green screen behind you, and then in your game you render a third view from the same perspective as your real life camera, and then they superimpose that, right? So you can actually record yourself inside of your own VR game. You know, obviously in the headset you see it from your perspective, but everybody watching you can see it from the camera's perspective. And that's really interesting. You know, that will be a really interesting thing for, you know, my VR tutorials to much more clearly communicate to people what we're actually doing and accomplishing. Because that's the thing that really misses in VR. You know, when you are making VR content to an audience that's not in VR themselves, it's sometimes really hard to communicate what you're doing. And that sort of stuff, you know, Live kind of helps with that. All right. So I haven't really done anything since my last stream. So let's see where we are. Well, yeah, Peter, I'm really enjoying that too. I kind of like just doing a bit of talking about what the week was about and interacting with you guys, and just, you know, and I'm kind of making that a standard thing in these live streams, is, you know, doing an hour, maybe an hour and a half of just chatting and looking at some stuff, and, you know, just seeing what happened during the week. So that becomes like a news bit of the stream, and then doing another hour or two of actual development. Although I am going to try and really make an end. You know, I say this every week, and we never do it. You know, we end up going on till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. But I'm really trying to end it at 12 p.m. You know, run over for about 15 minutes is fine. But one of my hardest challenges at this point in time, and something that I haven't gotten sorted out yet, is because I'm now working for Godot, and because everybody's spread out over the world, I actually do my workday in two parts. I work 4 hours during the day, so I drop my kids to school, then I do 4 hours of work, then I stop, prepare my kids' meals, pick them back up from school, and then I sleep. I take a break for, you know, another 3 or 4 hours, and I try to get at least 2 hours of sleep. And then I do a night session so that I am online with, you know, another group of Godot developers, so I can work together. And I try to work from 8 till midnight. The problem is I usually don't stop at midnight. And you can do that for 1 or 2 days, but doing that for weeks on end kills you. So right now I'm at a point where I'm catching up on that over the weekend, but I'm starting to get more strict with myself, because it just simply doesn't help your productivity. You know, it just means that the next day you're more tired, you can't concentrate, and it doesn't work. So that's something that I'm still adjusting to. I'm getting better at. You know, I'm getting better at making sure that I get those 2 hours of sleep before my my night session, because I really need those. Because again, I'm living on 6-7 hours of sleep a day at the moment, and this live stream is the same. You know, if I don't get stricter with myself and make sure that at 12 we start, you know, putting an end to stream. So you guys as well, once you notice that it's past 12, give me a heads up. Like, hey, Baz, maybe it's time you start rounding off. Because else, you know, there's been a few times that I've gone on till 3 a.m. in the morning. And yeah, that won't go well for long. Let's say it that way. Um, but that's with anything new, right? You have to get used to it. You have to get a rhythm, and once you get that rhythm, then things will work out. So last week we did this whole thing with actually visualizing the path that we created. So we're still using our A star logic to do our path finding. Like I said before, I'm using my own A star logic, first of all, because I just wanted to implement it and show how it works, but also because this allows me to tweak it specifically to the needs of this game. While arguably the built-in A star in Godot is much better and much more performant, I'm probably going to stick with this. I will eventually remove all the debug stuff that I added, but not until I actually do a video tutorial on it, because I still want to use it there. So there's a bunch of things in there that give us a little bit of overhead, but I'm not too worried about it at this point in time. Inverse kinematics has actually been a part of gaming for almost as long as it's been a part of robotics. But it's been a part of the actual animation side of gaming. So it now being used real time to animate someone's avatar, that is really new. So yeah. But it's been used for animating characters and cutscenes and stuff like that for ages, which is kind of cool. So yeah, so what I did with the A-star logic, first of all, I want to keep it for this so that we have something that that we can customize for the needs of this game. But also, we've got our optimizations in here now. So one of the biggest things that was really important to me, and it's hard to kind of demonstrate at this point in time, but if I would move my character to a tile that is impossible to reach, A star is designed to find the shortest routes. And when it can't find the direct route, it's going to try and find more and more indirect routes. If there is no path, it's not going to figure that out until it has tested every permutation. So, you can grind A star to a halt if you don't put limits on it. But because we have an action point system, we can only move a certain amount of positions in one turn. We have a natural limit that we can employ. However, one thing that we discussed last time, and that I haven't really. Oh yeah, I made sure that my all my materials now have the glow on it, so we can see our knight properly selected as well. We now have 5 action points, or 5 move points, really. And the idea was always that you move and then you do your attack. But that's really traditional board game mechanics, where it just made sense to have that 2-step way of working. Well, when you look at a game like most games, turn-based games, you look at something like Fallout, or you look at who remembers Laser Squad? I really need to see if we can find an old copy of Laser Squad. That was such a cool game, and such fond memories of that. Probably if I play it now, I'd go like, I like this as a kid, really. But all those sort of games, you just have a number of action points, and whether you use those action points for movement or whether you use those action points for attack didn't really matter. But of course, if I only have 5 action points, that's not enough. So I then suddenly need to go to 10 action points, for instance, so that I have a little bit of room left for attacks. But that also means that a character can move much farther in one turn if they are willing to give up an attack. Although there's also a strategy element to this, where you could say, well, let's say that you have 10 action points, but if you don't use them all up, let's say that you use just 5 of your action points and you leave 5 in reserve, that you get a bonus if you get attacked. So if the enemy attacks you during the enemy turn, if you still have action points left, the character gets a defense bonus, or is able to do a counter attack first, or something like that. So, yeah. That's something that I'm thinking about. So I'm really tempted to remove the state thing that we have in here and just make it's my turn or my character's turn, and I just have a X number of action points, and I can use that for movement. I can use it for attacks. Once the action points are gone, the next character has his turn. That's something that I'm thinking about. Yeah, I could limit it by stamina, but then it's kind of okay, does that then not make more sense to have stamina and then use action points just for attack? The whole point is that you can swap between the two. That you can choose to use all your. You could even decide to use all your 10 action points for attacks. Let's say that my enemy is over there. I can just keep attacking my enemy. I don't need my movement points, right? So, yeah, kind of for it. Zahil, that's how I feel at the start of every stream, where it's sort of going like, haven't we been working on this for a couple of weeks now? Didn't we finish it a little while ago? But that's the incremental development cycle, right? We went from just having, pressing keys on the button on the keyboard and our character moving and our dungeon expanding, to doing all our A-star logic, to actually doing the movement of the A-star logic, to now visualizing our movement, and now taking next. Which, again, I'm doing this once a week. We have 3 hours, maybe 4 if we're lucky. We spend 1 hour, 1.5 hours for chatting. There's only so much left to do, right? See you, Rod. Sorry to see you go. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Yeah, it's kind of that's kind of a good idea, Zahil, is that that the more attacks you do in one turn, the higher the cost for the attack. That's probably a pretty good way of doing it. All right. Now, one other thing that I'm really wondering about is, do I actually want my mini-map to show my my mouse cursor and things like that? So I might actually exclude that. I'll think about that as well. But I'm not too worried about that right now. That's not what I want to be working on. So I put these 3 things on there. So we're actually going to go and delete this. Is that just archive, or can I actually delete it? I just want to delete this. No. So the only option that I have is archiving it. Okay, well then I'm going to archive this. Boom. Goodbye. So we've decided not to do that. I don't really need to create a card for that. So in our global state, we're actually going to take our state out. Kind of a little bit double, I guess, because we call this global state. The turn is a state and the character is a state. So let's slowly start removing everything that has to do with our state out. So this is actually one that I want to make sure is in my find, because that's something that we need to get differently. There we go. So now we no longer... Did I remove too much? I might have just removed too much. Users... documents... No. I didn't put all the other stuff in it, so scripts. There we go. So I got that out, got that out. Got that out. Yeah, I had a feeling that I removed too much in that section. I'm not sure why. Because game started in reset level is here. Well, okay, so that block looked the wrong way around. Makes sense. You know what? Just to prevent that confusion later on, I'm going to make sure that those are in the same order. Ah, Hawaii! Nice! I really want to visit that someday. All right. So that's all out there. Okay, so we can take that out. There we go. All right. So let's go have a look at player character because we probably have a lot of changes in here as a result as well. So we got our highlight logic there. Became our current character. Perfect. Unset. Okay. So I think this needs to go over here. And we want to do the A star before we highlight our character. Don't really think it matters, but let's do that. Which means that we can now remove that one. Is there also stuff that we need to do in character then? I think so. We just remove our turn states. Perfect. Okay. Anything in enemy character? No, that's not implemented yet. Okay. So we don't care about this guy anymore. We just have point to cell enter. We do our A star again because we're always in that mode. Okay. Move character, perform action. Okay, so we no longer care about that. We are just performing. Oops. All right. And we'll change that in a second. All right, so if we no longer have action points, then that's it. Just that we don't do next turn state. We now do next character. Because our character is finished. Cool. All right. I think that's it. Let's see if our game still works or if it errors out. Oh, thank you, Oni. I'm glad you're enjoying them. That's what we do them for. All right, there we go. Let's see if we don't move all the way. There we go. Okay, cool. Still need to fix the animations. We'll do that at some point in time. So my game is suffering from the fact that the FBX importer is a little broken because all the characters are actually, well, the characters are GLTF. I'm using GLTF files there, but the animations are FBX. So I might actually just do my own animations. Unless I can convince Kay to also deliver the animations as GLTF. That would be kind of cool. Alrighty. So that means that we actually also need to remove the state from our UI. Okay. So no more state. Goodbye. Okay. That means we do not connect to that one. Don't care about you. No longer care about you. I think we also done. Oh no, we did already remove our signal. That's good. Interesting that we didn't get an error out of that then. All right. All right. I think that also means okay. Okay, I think that's just something that we're going to. We're actually going to put that over here. I did have those. New. Points. New. Okay. What I'm going to do here is if changed. There we go. Okay. Now the reason that I put that in here, even though I'm not going to manage it here, actually, I'm going to make that a separate section and just so whatever character is current is the one that we're currently interacting with. So what we're going to change is we're actually going to remove this AP and we're going to change that to our global states set current action points. We're just going to update that over there. Okay. And here, you know what? I'm actually going to keep AP in here. We're just going to communicate AP here. There we go. And we're actually going to go and copy it over here as well. Go. Oh, we don't need to do that over there because this is the only place that we are changing it. So the reason I'm doing this is just so that we have it in our global information so that we can have stuff react to it. I could do something where the turn is actually asking the character for updates, but or should I do it that way? That kind of makes sense too. I like that more. I like that more. I'm going to do it that way. I am going to do it that way. So we're not going to do it like this. Okay. Instead, we're going to emit it here. We're going to actually say we have a... no, I want to do it after the class name. And actually after our exports. Signal action points changed. New AP. There we go. Still thinking about actually renaming this to something more clear. Okay. That's a good one. Became current character. If I go to global state here, we do this before we emit. Okay. So I'm not actually going to emit. Well, yeah, I don't really care. Emit. Because who knows, if someone wants to react to it at this point in time, then we should allow it, even though I don't think anybody is going to. And now we're going to do the same thing over here. When it changes, we emit that signal. Is there a way that we can say that this signal is... Come on. Signal. Okay, we're gonna have to make sure that we see if the order is. I'm a little worried about the order, because if over here we get the next character, we change our character. Is there still a signal on the stack at that point in time? I'm not sure. Amazing project. Hi, Ivan. That's a good one. Someone's in their dad jokes mode. All right. So now that we have that, okay, so we have a connect on our next turn, but I also want to connect on our next character. Okay. Global state connect. Nope. Next character. So next character. Okay. Can I do that safely? I don't know. We'll see. All right. There we go. Okay. If you have a current character, what we need to do is we have to disconnect from this guy. Our action points changed. Self action points changed. Obviously, I want to make sure that that exists. UAP. Let's pass that. All right. Now what we're going to do is say current character is... add a new in there. That's our new character. I think we only want to do this when let's just duplicate this and say AP left. Actually, just call it AP. Okay. If we have one, we're actually going to connect to that signal. And what we're going to do is AP visible is current let me think is player controlled. So only if we are a player controlled character we show our AP, and we might eventually of course have a whole bunch of UI elements that we only want visible when it's our player. Come to think about that, we'll eventually want to have We'll eventually want to have sections on the screen. No, we're not sending the ID. We're sending actually the character object, or a node pointer. All right, this is Alex. Thank you for joining. Evil Cheer mixed. I maintain a bunch of plugins for Godot, so obviously that work goes into the plugins. And I do a whole bunch of work on the core as well, and that is added to the core of the application. So I do both, and then of course I on stream and you know, I have my personal projects. Those are just shared on my GitHub page. So, haven't really made a big announcement around it, but this is on my GitHub page now as well. So you can actually look at the source code of the maze. So, I still do need to do some cleanup, especially around the assets and stuff like that. But yeah, it is there. Excuse me, something stuck in my throat for the last bit. All right. My hesitation at this point in time is I'm thinking that I want to have some containers. Well, I've got my HBox and VBox controllers that I use. Can I use just a container? Is that just going to be something that is placed? Yeah, so this is going to be current state. There we go. And I'm going to move this inside of that. And then I'm going to add another container. Call that player. I'm going to put my AP in that. And I actually want to put this one on my left bottom. And that one's going to be on my top left. There we go. Did I put any sort of margins? I did. There's probably some margins on that one as well. Although that obviously needs to go and go upwards, but we're not really going to worry about that right now. Container by itself serves no purpose unless the script configures its children placement behavior. Okay, so I need to just change that to a plain control mode. Okay, that's fine. Oops. Control. As well. And I might change that eventually depending on what we'll end up using. So we'll just do a normal control mode. That's fine. For now, that is fine. Does of course mean that we need to change the path here. So this is going to be turn state.turn. Now I'm going to hide the whole player thing if the player is not in control. And again, right now it's just a label that's going to display our action points. But eventually there'll be a health bar or well, there will be a health bar and there will be other things. So whenever, and obviously we're going to be disconnecting from other signals here when our character changes. What we now want to do here is next character, call our global state.get current. Do I have a get current character? No. No. Oh. Get character. What are we returning here? Character. Return. So that's going to be the node because that's the thing that we're sending through, isn't it? Yep. There we go. And it can be null in which case this does absolutely nothing, but that's fine. But the other thing that, of course, we want to do here is we're going to do set, no, action points changed, current character. Okay. That means we're actually going to move this to our character itself. So we have action points. And that actually means that I want to make that current action points. Which also means that we are going to go and change that. And we're going to change that. I'm going to change that. I'm going to change that. I'm going to change that. That's a lot of changes. Finally, that also means that our signal is going to be defined on our main class. And that we're going to not send that out on our enemies. I don't really care. But that means that our we don't have to make special exceptions in our UI script for that. Game unset, so fine. Let's just go and return it here. Func get action points. Actually, get current action points. So I want to make sure that is clear. Turns an int. Current action points. I want to make sure that is typed. I'll make sure that is typed as well. There we go. Well, I'm not too worried about that because again, that's the whole idea that I have here. In theory, we should be getting this first. So current action points. All right. Player AP text is AP plus str p new AP. Let's actually be consistent in the naming here. Call that new. Call that new. All right. Let's see if that works. Ooh, no, I forgot to copy that in there. I did do though there. Oh, but there is also an AP here. There we go. Hi, Gillis. How you going? And we need one over there. Oh, and another one. Okay. So our action points is shown over here. Action points 5, 2. There we go. We'll have 2 left. 0. And now we're at 5. That's pretty cool. All right. What did I make? Turn state. Turn. That's gonna be splash turn. Okay. We're getting there. Go, Mr. Knight, go and follow. And now we're at turn 2. There we go. Oh yeah, I think I saw some of the discussion on the Godot chat. Not really what I'm using here though. I'm using a much simpler approach. You know, everything just laid out on a grid makes it so much easier than having to do a complete navigation map. But yeah, what I've always wondered about Hillis is when you let's say that you have a maze like this, right? And this guy is a predefined area that you're walking around, and you're using a navigation mesh to navigate around. How do you introduce obstacles, dynamic obstacles in the mesh? Because that was a problem that I actually had with the built-in A-star logic that's in in Godot is trying to figure out, like, in this case, is I can't get this guy to now, end up where my knight is, but it's also my path is now moving around my knight. And that is because the A path logic that I wrote is aware of the change in obstacles. And in this case, the knight is an obstacle for our mage. But I've never really found how you do that in the built-in A-star logic. And, by extension of that, how is the navigation mesh going to deal with that? All right. That all works, I think. Now, no, I need to answer it up. Now that we have a UI here, and we actually have a UI communicating with our characters, we can actually put our button in here. No, I want that over here. Why is that not? You know what? I'm actually gonna change this to a VBox container for now. And we're gonna give this some text. And intern is not really the right word in this case because we're ending just the no, I'm just gonna go next. I want to be consistent in my font use. One of these days I still need to look into setting up themes and just using the themes for this, but there we go. I am not using that for these guys, am I? All right. Let's go and be consistent about this. Now, this is one thing that I don't like, is that because we positioned it in the corner, it's actually extending downwards instead of upwards. I need to reset that to make sure that it's still in the right place. Now, the other thing is that now, yeah, that's now reset, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Okay, cool. That's the other thing. I still need to figure out, okay, how can I make sure that this has an inner margin? Because I can do this. But that's going to be reset every time that... is it going to move it down? Okay, let's see. If I now do this... See, that resets to 0. I don't know. I'll figure that out at some point in time. Hiya, Code Decode. Is there a build ID for objects? Yes, every object has an ID. So if we actually put a breakpoint here. And you can see that the current character is object ID 2110. So every object has a ID internally. But, we can just do compares, we could even say something like this is if current character is new character, we don't need to do anything because we're already on the right character. So we can do that as a safeguard if we want. I think we can even do it like this. I think this will compare nulls properly. We can just say if it's not going to change, just don't do anything. Kind of handy for the first time. Ah, we have a navigation obstacle object. Cool. So yeah, I need to figure out how to add some margins there. The other thing that I need to do is make sure, I can do that on the button. So what we do over here is pressed connect to UI. There we go. We just call next character there. Now, what I don't know at this point in time, do I need to do a set input as handled to prevent? Well, this is always going to be far enough, I guess, because when I move this guy, this is never going to be behind somewhere. Oh, I was skipping through our turns. Yay. So yeah, go. All right. Well, that's fixed. Okay. So skip move. Boom. Actually, so far we've only done things tonight that weren't planned, so I wanted to go and work on the transition. Next. Ha! It's Tochi says hello and then bye. Okay. Well, hello and bye, I guess. Nice of you to join. And yeah. All right. So the other thing that I wanted to do is let's go and move our friendly mage away a bit. So we keep just going boink, boink between these characters. And I actually want to make that transition a bit nicer. Instead of it just flipping over. Because I'm pretty happy with this right now. So obviously that UI needs to be a lot better. And we're going to have other buttons in there as well. So we'll see about how we place them. And it might eventually become a little sub window. I don't know yet. But yeah. We will see eventually how we make that work. For now we have that. So that's in our main, I think. Is that? No, it's not. Where is it then? No, it should be. Oh yeah. So if it's player controlled, we change our camera. All right. Now what we're doing here is we're just changing the camera from one to the other, where the camera rig is now on the mage. So we have that immediate change. Now what we can simply do is we can remember what our global position is. Transform is camera roots dots global transform. Boom. There we go. No, that's a property. And then here at the end, I want to actually put my global transform. Oops. Transform. Back to current transform. Okay. So now, even though our camera rig is now childed to the next character, we still position it on the character that we were. So what we now want to do is we want to go and move that over. And we probably want to actually do that inside of the camera roots. Okay. So if we go to our camera rig, we need a script on this guy. There. We also want to have a tween node on here. There we go. Because that is going to be handling this. And what we're going to do is add a function here, and we say func. I want to do that outside there. So move from. And that's going to be, actually, no. We're going to say move. We're going to say from. It's going to be a transform. We're going to pass. So now going back to here, instead of doing this, we're going to call that move function. And we're going to do that. All right. Cool. All right. And then here, how did tween work again? Where did I use tween before? I think I used it over here. That's my, oh, here we go. Yep. Interpolate method and then start. Cool. Okay. There's my camera. There's my camera. Okay. Camera. So we need a function for that. So func move camera to transform. Okay, so I want to make sure. Oops. Global transform is from. Let's make sure that we start there. That means that I can also say, oh, and I keep doing that wrong too. Because I really only care. Oh, it's a whole transform. Let's actually do that. Let's change that. Vector 3. Yep, V2. We're going to do the same thing here. We just want the positioning. Vector 3. Origin from. There we go. Which also means that I now need to change my main scripts. Current pulse is going to be a vector 3. And that's going to be our origin. And that means that's the one that we want to send through. Hi again. Hey, YB, how you going? How many cameras do I have? Only 2. I've got my main camera that we're seeing, and I got the top-down camera that I'm using for the map. Okay. So, tween interpolate method. That was self, I think. Move camera. Initial value is going to be from. New value is going to be an empty vector. Duration, let's just say a second. Let's just do a standard cubic. And why can't I see the autocompletion here? Let's just do the defaults like this. I think, anything more there? We're not going to do a delay. So let's go and take it out. All right. And now we can say tween start. There we go. Sweet. Let's go and have a look and see if that works. So we go there. And now our camera moves to our new character. Go there. Okay. All right. We are not going to go and do our global position, and therefore we're not going to go from here. We're going to go from our local position, because we want to use our global position to position our camera, but then we're going to tween our local position. Let's see if that works better. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's much better than send you the blend project. Which blend project, Weeby? You mean from this? There's no blend project. Kaylusberg.itch.io. I'm just using her dungeon pack. So, yeah, download the dungeon pack. Okay. So yeah, we need to make that a bar. I have more buttons there that we can do. There we go. Yeah, that's much better than the camera just swapping to another place. I like that. That's pretty cool. All right. We've done that one. All right. That's the next one. And with half an hour left, let's see how far we can get. Now, I have a problem. Because Luce's dungeon pack has a bunch of characters. But it doesn't have any enemies. We don't have an enemy character. Now, I guess we could use Mr. Skullhead as our enemy. And just combine some stuff. But I don't really want to do that. Now, the other option that I have, I think, Luce. No, that's only, well, yeah, that's if you're a patron and you have your troll thingies. Oh, hey, Ishmael. Hey, Jan, how you going, mate? So, yeah, rendering out, that's always the waiting bit, and then finding out that you made a mistake, and then have to render them again. All right. What else does she have on her Patreon? Maybe I should become a patron from her. I hate it when and everything is behind a lock, so you can't actually see what you're going to get if you become a patron. All right. Well, things are good. We've got some nice camera movement now. So when our character moves, we now have a camera nicely swinging back. We have our AP counter at the bottom now. We have a skip to the next character. So yeah. Pretty cool. All right. Now, let's see if there's anybody else who it is slowly starting to become my my favorite place to look for stuff. Game assets. Here we go. All right. Let's go for 3D. I want something like a little gnome or a tiny dragon or something like that. That could be interesting. Now, I'm not searching on price here. Those are really cool, but they're a little bit too serious for what I'm going for. Mind you, if in the end we just need to have something that... chess. That's pretty cool. Got some cool stuff on here. Among Us characters. That's pretty cool. Well, I could be scrolling here for hours. I don't think that's really a good way of doing our time. Try the Cute Monsters pack on Quaternius Quaternius? What the hell is Quaternius? Quaternius. Quaternius game aspect, okay. I haven't heard of that before. Okay, is there a search? Nature and characters. RPG characters. Cute animated monster pack. Maybe. Let's see what else is here. Dinosaurs. Oh, a naked man. Am I going to be demonetized now? It's only a cartoon character. All right, so let's have a look. What's all in here? License. Low polymers. Consider supporting me on Patreon. Even $1. CC0. Oh, that's doable. They are funny. Yes, you know, maybe as placeholder, that'll do fine. I really want a little dragon or something. What's this? Oh, what? Okay, that didn't work. I clicked it a little bit too much. These are just all too realistic for what I do. That guy's kind of cool. It's just that image that they gave you, right? CC0. I'm actually going to go for this. FB is probably going to screw up again. I guess I can open it in Blender and export it as GLTF. All right. Download. Okay. Oh, and copies it straight into Blender. That's okay. I really should be downloading this file, but that's okay. Acids. So this is coming from Quaternius. Was it at .com? I don't know. I guess, yep. Right. Animated monster back. New text file. License. There we go. All right. Okay, so it opened that straight into Blender. Hello, Mr. Monster. So, oh, look at that. App data. Well, documents. Where's Godot? Godot. Dungeon. Assets. Continuous. There we go. Dragon. Perfect. And now I want to do an export. GLTF. That's going straight into there. Perfect. Dragon. GLB. There we go. Now let's see if that survives. Possibly cyclic resource inclusion. It's always annoying when it does that. Oh. Save this. Let's go and have a look. There's a dragon. Doesn't seem to have its materials in place, but we can fix that up, hopefully. All right. Now, one thing that I want to know is, does his animation work? Cool. It does. Okay. Okay. Um. Okay. So this did not come with textures, so I'm assuming that our colors just got screwed up. All right. So his belly is a sort of yellow color. All right. We can do that. There we go. It's good enough for me. Oops. No. Sorry. Okay. Let's actually start with main. I guess that's going to be that red color. There we go. Make it nice and red. Let's keep doing that. Yeah, I just wanted to get the just one character for now. But yeah, I guess I could have done that and just download the whole thing. It's going to be black. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to... Why is metallic all the way to 1? That doesn't make any sense. Might make sense for the eyes, but... Is it the same here? Well, I guess a little bit of metallic in his skin doesn't really hurt. Definitely not in his belly. All right, I'm guessing claws should also be a nice dark color. Again, we're not going for preciseness here. And now eyes. Yeah, those can be nicely... I'm happy for those to be metallic. All right. Not that it seems to be working for some reason. That is because the roughness is way up. So actually I want to turn the roughness down for this guy. We've got some shine in his eyes. That's pretty cool. There we go. We got a dragon. Ha! That's actually not a bad idea. Would it be nice if he actually could open his mouth? But, yeah. It's good enough for now. Yeah, it'll be a glowing belly. It's fine. You know, it's just a placeholder. And even with K's characters, you know, I just need a character for fun. All right. So, scenes, characters, enemy characters. There we go. We got a player character. So we're gonna go and get a new inherited scene, basing it on our enemy characters. Now the problem is, I did this whole setup I might change that. All right. Where's my dragon? Where's my dragon? Why can I not find my dragon? It's not called dragon, probably. It is called dragon. Why can't I find dragon? I don't know. You know what? Well, dragon's in there. Where did it link it up? Oh, here. Okay. 000. Boom. There's a dragon. I have a feeling that our dragon is way too big. He needs to fit in the box. Smaller dragon. Now the dragon fits in the box. Good enough for me. Okay. Now. Dragon. There we go. So that really means that I actually want to change something else. Because I put the whole animation rig in here. Okay, that does mean that our dragon does need to be put on our pivot points. I do want to do that. But I think our animation rig, do I do anything in code here? I just have my animation finished here. There, pass, that's fine. And I do that. Okay. This is going to be a little bit tricky. Okay. Yes, this is going to be very tricky because I need to do this in the right order in order to not screw this up. So I'm going to remove the animation rig here. Goodbye. Save that. Now we're going to add the animation rig here. Oops. There we go. We're going to turn on editable children because we do need that. Right. And now I got to go and connect that to our player scripts. Where did I go? Player character. And that's already there because we just inherited that from our beginning. Okay. So that now means that here we no longer need that. There we go. And it also means that we need to get rid of this one. And that is going to go over here. Actually, I'll make a group with unready horse there. Okay, that's cool. I'm not even sure if I use that actually. Yeah, I got my animation player here. All right, cool. So in theory, this should have survived. Yeah, everything is on me. So our mage has got no idea that we've moved our whole animation rig out of our character class and into our player character, because our player characters are now all based off of K's stuff, but we've got other ones there. Now, at some point in time, we may even have to go to a point where we put one more level in between, saying player character, and now we have K's player character, and then we have the mage and knight, if I ever want to introduce other types. I don't know. For dragon, however, we now just have the dragon in there because we don't care about the rest. I do want editable children. Okay. This one's not repeating. Okay. Is that the only animation that we have? Oh, we also have a dragon hit. What does that mean? Oh, he gets hit and he flies. Okay, that's pretty cool. All right. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to call dragon. Cool. We're going to go and extend scripts, dragon. There we go. Cool. So you kind of want to do the same thing on ReadyVar. Animation layer. Animation layer is drag animation player. There we go. What we're going to do here is animation player play dragon flyer. All right. It's live. It's true. Hits. False. And I'm going to say for animation finishes, if is live. So we're going to let it finish what it's playing currently. There we go. And else we're just going to play our flying. So as long as it's flying, it keeps flying, flapping its wings. If it gets hit, we'll play the hit animation as soon as we can, and then go back to flying. And when he dies, we're still flying. Smog is here. GLB is a C. Yeah. It's interesting that it doesn't, because it does it with GLTF files. It does actually show it in that dialog. So probably GLB, it just doesn't have that option. But that's fine. All right. So now when we look at our maze logic, what time is it? It's almost time to finish. All right. We're going to go and create a list of enemies, of possible enemies that we can spawn. All right. Helps if I spell right. All right, so we're going to do the same thing as with our room. So the whole idea, and right now we're just dumping everything in main, but eventually we'll have we'll transfer this into a base level where we can load in different levels. But it's our maze logic that is going to guide everything that we encounter. So we've now set up our rooms folder to say this is where for this level all our rooms are. And in the same way, we're going to set up an enemy folder. So we might eventually have different folders of enemies depending on, what maze we're in. And we're going to make that work in exactly the same way as with our rooms, where on our ready here, okay, we're going to go and copy a whole bunch of these things. The code is going to be very similar. Load our scenes. Going to be enemy folder. Okay, we're going to go through there, and here we're obviously going to say enemy character. We don't care about that one. We want to find our dragon and stuff. There we go. There we go. That in there. our entry. Dictionary is new dictionary. And then at the end, we're going to say enemies push back. There we go. Okay. I put that in the wrong place. We don't need that one anymore. Actually, I'm going to call that enemy types. And again, that needs to be an empty array. There we go. Okay. Enemy types. Folder plus string plus file name. So again, I don't really like this part that we're actually loading the scene just to get some info out of it and then cast it away again. But it is just, well, I guess we're gonna keep the. Oh yeah, this is just our. This is just our scene file, so that's actually kind of good. We can keep that in memory. That's fine. But this is the bit. And I'm just going to go and copy that comment that I wouldn't mind figuring out a nicer way to do. And all that I want to do here is entry weight. It's 10 dots. And that obviously is something that we need to do here. How did I do with that with the room? Okay, let's go and copy that over. And that's kind of the likelihood that we get our character in there. Hi, Asterion. Yep, we're pretty much at the end of our stream, so we're just gonna see if we can get our enemies to spawn. They're not gonna do anything. It's just whenever we get into a room, we decide whether we're gonna put an enemy into our room, and that's it. All right. So, and hey, November Def. So the other thing that I want to do with this is I actually want to create an enemy spawn point. I want to create something that allows us to find where we want to spawn, because I don't want to randomly put an enemy in the somewhere in the room. I actually want us to dedicate where we have spawn points. So let's go into our base room scene. And we're just going to have a spatial here. I'm going to call that spawn points. There we go. And in every room we can add a spawn point in. And they're just going to be position nodes. These are normal spatials. All right. So let's go for this guy. Oh, too many things in there. Spawn points, spatial, and obviously I want to make sure. Whoops, I need to make sure it snaps. Let's just leave that one as our first spawn point. So we're just going to have one in there. I'm going to do the same thing here. And the name doesn't really matter. We just need a name. Make sure that is on the grid. And in this case, I'm going to say we could have an enemy spawn over there, or we can have an enemy spawn I need to make sure that it's properly in the center of our okay, our spawn points need to be the correct height. I'm gonna move that up. There we go. That's now moved up. So this one guy is actually in the wrong spot. It needs to be in the middle there. And that guy is in the right spot. Okay, isn't. So I'm thinking about at some point that I'll actually make this a subscene so that we can actually visualize it. Yeah, enemies that don't do anything are the best kinds. I'm actually going to do that right now. I'm going to go and say save branches scene, scenes, rooms. This guy is going to be called spawn point. There we go. All right. I need to use my trick again. I'm going to go move that one. Save. I'll make sure that this is all zeroed out. Save. Now I can move that guy back again. Okay. I should have moved it first and then renamed it, but it's okay. Okay. That's our spawn point 1. That's our spawn point 2. I'm actually going to leave that spawn point 1 there as a name. Makes it nice and easy to recognize. Okay. I am on here. Why can you not do that? Spawn. There we go. And it's just to make sure that it's in the position that that one was. So, there we go. All right. Now I need to visualize this. So we're going to just do a mesh instance. There we go. Cylinder master. I'm going to make that a cylinder. Then I'm going to make that really, really small. Go like a nice little flat dish. We're going to give that a spatial material. It's going to be unshaded because we don't care. And I just want this to make this a nice little color. I'm going to make that red. There we go. All right, so that is too low because we have our, oops. So maybe I will make this 0.5 just to give it some height. There we go. So we can see that those are our spawn points. Very good. Hopper. Let's go give this thing a script. And all we're doing in this script is make that false because that's just for our UI. All right. So all that I'm doing here is I am defining where I want enemies to spawn. Now, when there's multiple spawn points, I'm going to choose one spawn point, or maybe we'll have a choice of okay, how many enemies will we spawn, based on how many spawn points we have. So now we have two options. We could have done this in the room. No, I want to do this in the maze logic. I think that makes the most sense. So if we go into our maze, where's our maze? Maze. Okay. Character entered room. Blah, blah, blah. We've got our rooms. We got a new room, add child, and then we add our entry to our maze. Perfect. So okay, so we do our existing ones. So in our existing ones, I don't want to do anything. So we're going to create a new function here. Spawn enemies. And that's going to be based on our room. There we go. Okay. So we add our new entry, and now we call spawn. Let's just keep it simple for now. We're just going to add our dragon to every spawn point. And then we're going to start implementing some logic about how many we want to do. Of course, we only have one enemy right now, so I think we're probably going to end it with just adding them in. Let's just see how far we get with that. So, spawning our enemies into our room. Spawn points is going to be proom.getNode. Oops. No. Room. Spawn points. There we go. Dot get children. There you go. So there we have our list of spawn points where we could potentially create our enemies. Okay. Just want to have a look at main. Now we're in our maze. I'm just thinking of where do we add our characters. Just add them in our maze. That doesn't actually really matter that much. They don't really need to be actually, let's just make that an export property. I think that's probably a better idea. So, export node path bar enemy container. There we go. And now I can just put that over here, I think. On an unready var node container if else no. Cool. All right. So this is just to make sure that we only call get node if we actually have a container set, because else it'll break. All right. So now I want a spatial here. Gonna put that over there, and we're gonna say enemy characters. That is one up, and I want to do the same thing with this. And then we're simply going to say assign enemy characters then. So now we know that's where we can add our spawned enemies to. All right. So for spawn point in, you know what? I'm gonna go and do it like this. Boom. All right. We're gonna get a random integer. Why are you hanging? There we go. Okay, so if we look at our help for randi, that gives us a number between 0 and something very big. Very cool. Okay. So I'm going to do a modulus with 10. So now we're getting a number between 0 and 9. And then I'm going to say that needs to be bigger than 7. So actually, I'm going to do smaller than 3. That's easier to read. So I'm going to now have a chance of 3 in 10, so a 30% chance that we will spawn an enemy at this spot. All right. The next thing that we want to do is which, and it needs to be now enemy types dot count. So in this case, we're going to take the number of enemies that we have, size. So in this case, it's only 1. So we're going to do a modulus 1, which means that the outcome is always going to be 0. But let's say that we have 5 different enemy types. This is now going to give us a number between 0 and 4. And we can, at random, pick one. Now, eventually, we'll need to change this because our weight is going to need to, some enemy classes you want to spawn more likely than others. So for now, we only have 1 enemy type. So spawn, this doesn't matter. Okie doke. Now, the other thing that I think is that the chance of an enemy spawning, in this case 30%, which becomes 60% once we have, is it? No, it stays 30%, I guess. We get twice a 30% chance. I think it's one of those things where we probably want to make that settable maybe on the spawn point itself or in some other way. Yes, it is. Once we have our dragons getting in here, I'm going to call it a day. So I don't want to finish mid doing something, but this is definitely the last thing that we're going to do on stream. All right. So new enemy is enemy types, which reminds me, instance. No, it's scene. Did we call it scene? I can't remember what we called it. Enemy scene, okay. Now, better safe than sorry. We don't want to execute this if we don't have any enemy types. So here's our new enemy. Now we're going to do not enemy container node. We also want to get out of here. If we have no node to add it to, we don't want to add it. Here we're going to do an add child, new enemy. And now we're going to say new enemy dot global transform is... No, actually, I want to set that first before we add it in. Enemy dot transform. Okay, now this is going to be a little bit tricky. This is going to be spawn point dot transform. But I think it's going to be times enemy container node dot global transform. Oh, that needs to be global transform as well. Dot inverse. And this is going to transform into local space for our enemy container. And we probably want to cache this. So container inverse. I want to put in there container inverse transform. Come on, learn type. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so there's our inverse. And we're gonna put that in here, and then we're gonna add our child into our node. So, if my calculations are correct, we could get some spawning enemies. Look at that, we got our spawning enemies. However, we're gonna move this guy. We're gonna go move this guy. And now it's our beautiful little dragon's turn. And of course, our dragon doesn't have a turn. Now, one thing that I'm very surprised at is why did it even move to our dragon? Because it should only do that. Okay, so that guy is still player control. That's wrong. So I never set that on our enemy character. That needs to be off. Save. And hopefully, yeah, there we go. That's off. Perfect. Our dragon now has got that. Perfect. Now, the other thing that I want to do before I forget, seeing we have action points. We're also going to give them some default health points. And that will be tweaked eventually, but I just want to have that in place for later. Now, the other thing that we right now need to do is... hold on. I got too many things open. We're going to go and copy this into here. And all we're going to do right now is we need to trigger our AI that we don't have any. So global state dot, we're just going to pass our turn. Before I enable that, I just want to make sure that we're not going to get stuck in some other way. So now this guy's turn, and yeah. So, alrighty. Okay. Okay. Now, there's one other thing that we haven't done properly. And that is that our enemy dragon here is causing my lights to be on. All right, so let's go back to this guy, he's in the enemy layer. So why is my torch detecting him? Is our dragon also in our enemy layer? Is that maybe our problem? Our dragon is in our enemy layer. I think it might be because of the mask. I might have made that mistake. So I actually need to... I don't think it should be that, but I just want to rule that out as the cause. So that's good. All right. See if that works. Yeah, see our dragon. So that's interesting because our dragon was in certain masks. It still triggers, and I've had this problem with areas before where the areas aren't just reacting on the layer that we put the object in. It's also reacting on the mask of. I think that's actually a bug in the thing. Now, obviously. Our dragons aren't doing anything right now because we don't have any AI. And we don't have a way to attack our dragons yet. But we're spawning some dragons into our seed, which is really cool. So yeah, right now I want to be able to attack my dragon. Cool. All right. Okay. Now, obviously, we wanna put a bunch of logic into our dragon. We want to make sure that our dragons face our character. We want to make sure that our dragon, if it detects our character, that it moves towards our character. That sort of thing. All right. Let's go back to here. So we're spawning enemies now. We need more enemies to spawn. But we're spawning enemies. That's good. All right. I think next time we're going to start working on adding AI. Yeah, that's something we need to do. Something to do. I want to see if we can get to a point next week where we can actually attack our dragons. No, that's not what. Why does it keep doing that? Did I now lose it? Really? Oh, it's back again. Okay, cool. Sometimes Trello is a little weird. Make more. There we go. Because obviously, a lot of the logic is going to be shared between them all. We're just going to drive it as one way, shape, or form. So that's going to be, the AI is going to be implemented on our enemy class, and then our dragon is going to use it. Yeah. We need to actually add a goal in, Right now we can go around our maze for as long as we want. But at some point we want to obviously, we want to have a treasure room or something like that. So that's something that we can do. Noobs, that's indeed something to be careful with. I don't know if you're using my XR tools. Make sure you have the latest one because I fixed a bunch of things around it. But it's important that you use the right physics layers and put everything in the right physics layer. Because indeed, in default, if you don't set it up properly, then you're actually going to have your character collide with itself, and that's causing the character to fly off. A lot of fun. So yeah, you have to be really careful what interacts with what. Okay, cool. I think that was really cool. We really got to a good place with this. This is slowly starting to become a working game. I think next week, if we can get some really simple AI going, and we can make sure that our characters can attack the dragons. We might actually do that the other way around. We're going to make sure that we can attack the dragons first. And then the dragons will start attacking us. Yeah, I think that is probably a good idea. All right, Jan. Good luck with finishing your tutorials, and I'll see you next week, I hope. And yeah, I'm going to end it there, everybody. I hope this was enjoyable. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you guys are enjoying the little game. I will be uploading most of these changes onto my GitHub page. So for those who are unaware, my GitHub page is over here. And somewhere in the repositories over here, there is now a Godot dungeon. So there's a little dungeon game. So you can play around with it. Now, I have no idea how well this works on lower end hardware, or if it even works on lower end hardware. This is a pretty beefy computer. I haven't really spent much time optimizing anything. We still have all the debug logic in the background for the A-star that I want to use for the tutorial that I'm doing on A-star. Which I'm going to do after the tutorial that I'm working on right now, which is maze creation. So yeah, we're running ahead of the tutorials a little bit. It's going to be fun. Okay, thank you all for watching, and see you guys next Friday, I hope. Till then, bye.